us a few seconds while Romanov joins, and then we will be underway.
Hello.
Oh, hello.
How are you?
Good, good. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Wicked. That is good to hear.
Yeah. um, how are you doing this fine evening?
Not too bad. Obviously busy the last couple of weeks, preparing for Christmas and New Year and this kind of stuff.
Oh yeah, it's that time of the year, the crazy one.
Yeah. Yeah. How are you?
Doing fine, yeah. Trying not to get out of the house too much because the traffic is terrible and everywhere you go, you're just stuck most of the time. Couple of days
Yeah.
ago, a friend of mine invited me to have lunch, city center. So I said, yeah, why not? It's a good idea. It took me like an hour and a half to get back.
Ooh.
Yeah, it was annoying. It was the mix between the first day of Hanukkah and the finals of the World Championship, like the soccer.
Ah. Yeah.
Yeah, so I'm like, yeah, probably should have been wiser, but at least the lunch was good. We had good hummus.
That's the most important thing.
Yeah. Yeah, meeting friends is one of the kind of more pleasant pastimes. So welcome everyone. I would like to start by saying that this is going to be our last space this year. Next week we're going to skip because of the festivities and preparations, and everybody is going to be either busy or on vacation. So the next one after this is actually going to be 2 days after Beam birthday, which will be on January 3rd.
Yeah.
Try to prepare something nice. And yeah, so I think it's a good opportunity to go over this very challenging year and talk about the future as well.
Yeah. A lot taken place over the last year, that is for sure.
Way too much. Um, so, even though we don't like usually talk about this much, but the year was actually very like crazy. Starting with, we just kind of started to get out of this COVID pandemic, and then the war between Russia and Ukraine started. So, and as you know, many, like probably most in terms of numbers, developers of Beam are living in those areas and either directly, in zone or kind of around it. And many of them had to leave their countries and move around. Many of them suffered all kinds of bombardments. And so, first of all, I would like to be thankful that everybody is alive and relatively healthy, which is good. And
Absolutely.
yeah, I truly would hope that next year this craziness would end in some way. The sooner the better, and we could go back to our normal ways of life, especially for people who live there. So that's kind of in terms of general situation in the world and safety. Now, obviously, we have been also experiencing this kind of a bear market, which is funny because, um, you know, first, many governments printed a lot of money to deal with the pandemic, and then they have raised the percentages on, so to remove this extra money they printed over the streets,
Yeah.
which kind of,
And
yes. So they created the inflation and they started fighting with that inflation. It was all very confusing.
yeah, to say the least. Yeah.
Yeah, they have kind of went a little bit, I think, off the handle with the printing stuff back in the day, and obviously the war also didn't add anything good to that situation because of the rising prices for gas and oil and all that. So it was a very strange kind of situation, and created a lot of chaos all around the world. And also because of this downward market, we saw a lot of different weird and crazy things happening all over. Mostly bankruptcies from all kinds of different organizations. Some of them, I think, were actually, I would say, kind of good bankruptcies in a way that they exposed um, the long-running schemes and scams and whatever to basically just, uh, you use the fact that when everything rises, everything looks so good, people just get very trustful with their money where they shouldn't and should be more suspicious.
Yeah.
I think Celsius and obviously FTX are good examples of things that should not have happened.
Yeah, and I think one of the coolest parts of all this is that while these guys were blowing up and whatever and all of their kind of trickery became exposed, most of crypto or like the DeFi apps and this kind of stuff all held up pretty well, bar of course some massive hacks.
Absolutely, absolutely, and we're going to talk about that today. So from the Beam perspective, we started this year, actually closed the last year of 2021 with a 6.2 release, which happened to be the last release in the 6 series. And then we worked for about 5 months. And then in May, we have released the next hard fork version, which was the 7.0. And it added a lot of improvements, especially to the decentralized application support. And we also reduced eventually the cost of minting a new asset on Beam, which has also improved kind of the amount of projects that engaged with Beam following that, reduced price later in the year. We added a lot of new functionality, decentralized dApp store, and the asset swap marketplace being, I think, the most notable ones. And we also created several applications, even though we did not complete the roadmap that we intended to by the end of the year. We intended to launch at least 3 more DeFi applications, which are still coming, but were not released like as they were supposed to before the end of the year. I think we did release bans. We have improved the NFT gallery, and we also started our journey towards the DAO governance, which was an important one. Definitely far from finished, but at least we did the first steps, and I think it was good overall for Beam. Now, in general, like I would like to kind of do 2 things today. First of all, try to understand what changed in crypto this year, and I promise not to go, too much into philosophical thoughts, but rather keep it very specific and practical, and also try to understand where we see ourselves as a project in the next upcoming year. And so first of all, let's start with this kind of overview of what happened. So first of all, Ethereum merge happened, right? That was one of the major events, September 15th, I think it was.
Yeah, and this has been like a while in the making and soon TM for a very long time.
Yeah, so it was a very event. It actually, in my opinion, was. I know it's funny to say that while people were waiting for this to happen for, I don't know, 2 or 3 or 5 years, but it actually happened a bit too early, I think. And some important things that should have been included in that merge were not included. I'm talking about the PBS, the producer builder separation, because what happened after the merge, it had this new kind of economy for Ethereum, which was no longer driven by miners, but rather by validators. But these validators have created this new kind of ecosystem with block builders who were supposed to be completely separate. And then this new structure, which is mostly operated by through Flashbot's marketplace, was created, and it actually favors a lot the stakers for Ethereum. So this Ethereum stakers, they get most of the profits from all of the MEV that is detected, and it's very kind of lucrative position that they are in right now, and it does not properly guarantee, in my opinion, censorship resistance, which is a big problem. And
Yeah.
in overall, it creates, in my opinion, a situation where the centralization of these processes will only increase with, as you know, as time goes by, because the more you stake, the more you get, and eventually you will see like several large organizations. Like even today, I think most of the staking power is controlled by like 5 or 6 organizations, which are on the top of that staking list. And I think it's not a good idea, overall. Also, the flash bots are massively influential in the space, and also the Ethereum clients are not kind of diverse enough. So deal a lot of issues that Ethereum will need to overcome to become truly kind of decentralized blockchain. However, at the same time, it's important to emphasize that Ethereum has been the dominant ecosystem throughout the entire year and will probably continue to do so because none of the other kind of contenders for that space, like Cosmos or Polkadot, are nowhere near the adoption rates or the kind of amount of applications running on them. So Ethereum has almost become a like standard de facto of the industry, like alongside EVM.
Yeah, it's been pretty interesting to see the amount of kind of on-chain activity increase in the last couple of years, and much of it being on Ethereum, and if you stretch it out further, like the EVM taking a big market share, or whatever you call it, for on-chain kind of activities.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, when we look at the picture, I don't know, maybe a couple of years ago, there was kind of more diversity in, approaches to all kinds of, different types of ecosystems, different attempts to create new architectures, new virtual machines. And right now, it's kind of very clear that at least if you want adoption, if you want liquidity, you obviously start as a new project. You start with Ethereum and EVM chains, and I think it's kind of it's a natural process, right? So like the more adopted technology, not necessarily maybe the best one, but the more popular one and the one which is easier to create applications for wins in the long run. And as you said, we saw that DeFi, especially the top kind of established protocols, have done really well in terms of stability, in terms of performance. And I think, obviously, the AMM pools, Uniswap and others, the lending protocols, Aave especially, and obviously stable coins like MakerDAO and Liquidity have done really well through very difficult times. And I think it's a great sign that we see like what's working and what's not working, like Luna is not working. Um, and, uh,
Yeah.
and it's very important to, kind of understand this because when everything is rising, obviously you cannot see the problems. When things are falling down, crashing down really quickly, you see exactly where the DeFi protocols have the advantage of using the over collateralization for stability or bringing liquidity quickly. So overall, my is that DeFi works really, really well, especially compared to many kind of centralized institutions and ways of doing things. And it's a great sign. So from Beam perspective, as you know, one of the things on our roadmap is integration of the EVM. And I think it's, kind of an essential step for us to expand the developer ecosystem, like bring applications that currently run on EVM to Beam. It will allow us, easier adoption, obviously, from the developer perspective, even though we did create our own virtual machine and it's working well and it's all good, but it's very difficult to learn, and it's difficult to switch developers from the technologies that.
Yeah.
So yeah, that would be, I think, a big boost for Beam in general.
Yeah, I think so. It'll be interesting to see it kind of take shape after this, I think, especially with like EVM compatibility and the BVM and see like which kind of emerges from there.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. Now, we still like see a lot of strange things in, when you look at the coin market cap top even 10 cryptocurrencies. Uh,
You don't have to go too far down to start seeing
yeah,
rather
yeah.
strangeness.
With all due respect, uh, Dogecoin, Cardano, come on, like, it's still crazy. But I think overall, especially because of the bear market, the amount of kind of craziness has reduced. Like, I mean, not reduced, but the amount of scammy projects that are appearing just, to make a quick buck is reducing overall. I think the influencers and their kind of, uh, you know, uh, attempts to draw people into clear scams that also on the decline in general, even though it still happens. And it's a good sign. It's a good sign. I think it's important for the ecosystem in general. However, one thing that did not improve significantly, and it's very unfortunate, is the security of the like smart contracts. The auditing does help, but does not prevent big hacks from happening. And there is still a lot to be done in educating people how to use cryptocurrency, how to store their keys, how to, you know, uh, manage their crypto holdings. Still, a lot of people, way too many people, are relying on custodial solutions and storing their, assets somewhere which is not in their hardware wallet. I think that the situation with the FTX really kind of opened the eyes of many people on how safe your money actually is when it's not your keys.
Yeah,
I think one of the kind of saddest, for me at least, example is what happened to the Solana ecosystem, because a lot of projects were forced or kind of motivated some way or the other to store their treasuries at FTX, and these projects just lost funding. And we're talking about good projects that really tried to create something like very important, positive, and suddenly just wake up, one morning after working so hard and being so proud that such a big organization as FTX invested in you, and you realize that all your money is actually gone and you have absolutely no chance of getting it back. I think it's very frustrating and sad, and I hope the good projects will still be able to survive, or maybe raise again, and hold their ground to, because I think this is very important work that they all have been doing. But it definitely opened the eyes of most people, I think, on the fact that regardless how big the organization is that holds your funds, if it's not your funds for real, you are in danger.
exactly. And like this became even clearer. But I feel like it's very difficult to get people away from these centralized services. Like one of my friends who I probably should be talking about him, but whatever. One of my friends who's not like super into crypto. I was talking to him in a group chat the other day, and he was saying, "Oh, I moved my like I don't know what he had. I moved my coins off Binance because of all the like chatter about Binance." And I said, "Oh, okay, cool. That's like whatever about the FUD or whatever's being talked about. It's always a good thing to do." Uh, but then his follow up was, I moved them from Binance to crypto.com, and I thought, oh, like
Oh,
so, so close yet so far. And like I think it's going to be difficult, and I don't know how it will happen to really like incentivize self custody, if not for like the biggest exchanges and the biggest lending platforms blowing up, then I'm not sure uh, what
yeah.
the catalyst will be.
Now, yeah, so this problem is actually one of, I would say, like three or four kind of top problems in crypto right now is
Yeah,
key management in general, how to allow safe custody for not only individuals, but also organizations where it's more difficult. Like if you are a big bank or an exchange, obviously you have very expensive solutions today, and you need a team of people just to support it. But if you're a small business, or you really want safety of holding your funds, and really only kind of allowing you or people you trust to access them, but at the same time you want some kind of safety that if you lose your key, and it's not like all gone in the second. This is something that quite a few projects today are trying to solve. So I hope it will improve in 2023. This is actually one of the areas that I think a lot of research and development money will go to in next year.
yeah,
Now, good news about that on the Beam front. As you probably heard, we are working right now on the Ledger hardware wallet for Beam. Back in the day, we started with Trezor. We could not make them integrate Beam, and now, due to really amazing, magical-like efforts of Vladi, core Beam developer, we are very close to actually putting Beam on the Ledger, and it will work on both the older Ledger Nano S and the newer Nano S Plus. The Nano S Plus has more processing power and has more memory, so it's been a little bit easier, but the old Ledger Nano S is more popular. And Vladi is really doing, I don't know, magical tricks. He had to rewrite because obviously in Beam we have quite an intense calculations that we need to do for bulletproofs, and he's been doing crazy stuff there to try to fit all that into this tiny memory space on this very very old device. It was actually old like when it was out, right? It's really minimal, and it seems to be working. So we really hope that in the next few weeks we will release support for the Ledger,
yeah.
which is
This is
amazing.
it's a huge like achievement and going to be very useful like in the coming days, weeks, months, and years. Like it'll be a huge addition to being able to safely hold onto your Beam and store them in a hardware wallet. Very
Yeah,
cool.
I totally agree. And yeah, we think that it will really be useful for Beam holders in general and institutional ones in particular. Um, so one of the things that additional thing that I'd be very interesting to watch and observe in 2023 is the development of layer 2 technologies, specifically ZK rollups.
Yeah,
As you probably just very recently, Aztec raised $100 million from Anderson Horowitz and other investors uh, for um, for their solution for the uh, ZK rollups, the layer 2 solution. And also Polygon has just announced that they're launching the second testnet for their ZK EVM solution. So it's going to be a very interesting competition between these different companies that are working on zero knowledge layer 2. Now, it's a good thing, and I think it solves kind of one of the other big problems, which is the problem of scalability. But what is also interesting about it in our context is that they also mention privacy quite a lot in the announcements, and all over the media you see that they raised 100 million from A16Z for privacy-focused layer 2 solutions, right?
yeah. This is like it's very cool to see money being put towards privacy and crypto. I think that's like a huge win for anyone building privacy oriented tech and crypto.
Yeah, I agree. However, uh, I think there is kind of some problem with, or kind of misleading uh, use of the term privacy here, because and that's why I generally prefer the term confidentiality for Beam. But privacy in the context of ZK rollups is what I call the privacy for the big guy. Why? Because eventually what's happening is that the aggregator of these transactions, the one that receives all the transaction and generates the proofs, is the one that sees all the information and has the ability to store it. So yes, when you get the transactions on chain, eventually they are more private from others' eyes, people who are competitors or like other traders for sure, but it's still accessible by governments or other organizations that can reach to this aggregator and say, oh, um, how would you like to keep the logs of those transactions and give us those logs and trace out certain things, and they can also censor transactions, obviously according to different rules. So this is very different from the privacy when we talk about privacy in Beam, or if you talk about privacy in Monero, because we're talking about the privacy for the little guy, right?
Yeah.
And this is actually very interesting because one of the reasons that everybody is waiting, like why would they invest this huge amount of money in the bear market for this solution? And the reason is because it really solves a huge problem. It solves the problem of getting faster access to liquidity on decentralized networks. Now, when you talk about big organizations, yes, they could have established their own kind of private, internal blockchains and do this, but this always limits players, and obviously you are interested in as many players as possible to provide liquidity as quickly as possible. And ZK rollups do exactly that. And also it solves the problem of privacy for players, but not from censorship or from kind of centralized control, but rather from kind of other players in the market who do not have the capacity to, access this internal information of companies. And this is why I think such a big kind of investment was made. Because the first one to solve it, and it's specifically on Ethereum, because as we said, Ethereum is kind of the center point, the focal point of all of this activity. Like go with Solana, they wouldn't go quicker protocols because there's not enough liquidity there, but rather you are solving this issue directly on the most popular chain with the most liquidity already. I think that's why they're so kind of interested in seeing this happen.
Yeah, makes sense.
Now, this brings us to the question of what should we do, we as Beam. And I'm kind of voicing my own, thoughts here and filtered thoughts, but this is like my opinion, not necessarily of everyone else at Beam or in the community in general, in order to kind of generate this discussion. So the question here is, can we succeed as an independent chain in terms of like, just how would I put it? Basically keep doing what we're doing, right? So we're Beam. So you have more applications on Beam, more development on Beam, like and basically succeed as Beam. Or do we need to think about more kind of using the Beam technology in integration with other not necessarily projects, but like other directions in the market and try to create like opportunities in this way. And I'll try to explain what I mean. So let's take the first approach, right? We see, for example, let's say Zcash and Monero, right? Two projects that were around when we started.
Yeah.
Now, first of all, I would like to say that Monero did actually really well, I think, in this last year, in terms of the performance, and it's impressive. But at the same, like, there was no major, I think, evolution there. They kind of remained the same in 2018 in most aspects. So there were incremental improvements, which are also very important, both in for Zcash, it was the speed of confidential transactions there, and for Monero, it was the improved anonymity set. But there was no kind of major shift or change in what they can do, right?
Yeah.
And I'm not sure. Like even though at Beam we did like make a lot more things in terms of the technology we developed, we have added smart contracts, we have really improved our wallet ecosystem. But I'm not sure, like even with all of these improvements, it's just like playing this, standalone blockchain thing now in the year 2023 is going to cut it. So it's an open question, right? Nobody knows. I don't know, and obviously I would love to hear your opinion about this.
Yeah, and of course there's like pros and cons to each approach and this kind of thing as well.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And there is also not there is no answer. Like it's not a quiz. There is no answer at the end.
No.
Um, so there like even with, like okay, so let's say we do add like already we added the virtual machine, the EVM, um, and then we created let's say the kind of um, thing that we talked about, the sidechain infrastructure, which allows you to run several Beam power chains alongside each other with different consensus models. And let's say we even had integrated this IBC-like mechanism, the inter-blockchain protocol that allows you to move assets easily from one sidechain to another with less risks than, let's say, centralized bridges. Even if we did all that, we would be somewhere around where I would say, like, if Monero married Cosmos or something, like this area, right? So you do have a lot of functionality, but is it enough to really gain traction in this year? Considering we are probably going to be in the bear market, I'm sorry, for the most of the year, and we really do need to focus our energy on building something that will create more benefit when the bear market ends. Like, is this the way to go? That's the question number one.
A very good question for the first one, and one that like uh, I mean you need time to see it play out and see the answer to it, I guess, and even then it's not going to be a black and white answer, uh,
No.
and a lot to discuss in the community and this kind of thing on what the best direction is in this regard. I think like I've expressed my opinions on the sphere a bit and like uh, but obviously like I too will be the first to admit to that I have no idea.
Yeah. So just I think an hour ago, uh, there was this thread on Twitter about the Messari report that was just published.
Yeah, 160 odd pages of the like where crypto's at kind of thing, right? I think they do it
Yeah,
yearly, right?
yeah, and it's usually a very thorough and kind of well constructed overview of the trends and the different concepts that the crypto has been experiencing during the year, and trying to extrapolate from that on what is going to happen like next year. So Messari is a very interesting organization. They collect and they see a lot of data, so I really like to read the reports. Now, specifically in this one, on the page 86, I think it was. Let me find it because I think it's very interesting. So they talk about privacy coins and private transactions, right? And here they formulate it in this kind of longer form, but in the tweet, it was really funny because like, oh, like, yeah, Zcash is great, but if only there was a layer one cryptocurrency with end-to-end privacy. And I'm like, you mean like Beam? I mean, that's exactly what we are, right? And it's like everybody is looking for this solution, which we have.
Yeah.
And it's so funny. And I think, like, wait a minute, we did build that. Why won't you even mention us? Why don't you do a research and try to understand what happened? Because in the report, which is, as you mentioned, is 160 something pages long, they do talk about Monero and Zcash, which is crazy. Like, when are we? Like, what are we in 2017 or something? Like, I mean, um, and they Aztec as kind of privacy-oriented solution because, as I said, it is a privacy, but not privacy for everyone. And they do mention Tornado Cash, which I think, by the way, is one of the more alarming developments from the regulatory standpoint in this year, because it was the first time in history, as you know, when the centralized protocol was added to sanctions list, right? And I'll talk about that in a minute. But basically, what it means that, and they mention it, like Ethereum is not going to solve the end-to-end privacy on layer one, right? That's not going to happen, not in the near future, probably not ever.
Yeah.
But which solution are you going to use to provide this privacy? And I layer two ZK rollups, it's good, but it's not enough. It's not, you know, the best approach. Definitely not for censorship, and definitely not for you know, limiting I would say, you know, surveillance, government interference, and things like that. And maybe we should reach out to these Messari people, like kind of point them into the right direction. But it's a problem. It's a problem when you do have the solution, nobody knows about you. Yeah, we obviously don't have enough traction and enough market cap to be like even there with Zcash and Monero. But I do think technological improvements that we made and the tools that we do have inside Beam are there, and they're ready to solve many of those problems that are mentioned even in this report.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think like I just want to say that I agree with what you mentioned about like the layer twos and the ZK rollups and this kind of thing, especially given like the Tornado Cash situation, that seems like a kind of suboptimal approach to solving like crypto's overarching need for privacy. And I mean, one of the cool things that I think we saw with Tornado Cash last year was that there is a real like demand for privacy. Like there's definitely people out there that are wanting to transact privately, wanting to separate their accounts and this kind of stuff. And I think like that was great to see. The sanction stuff was obviously not so great at all.
Yeah, yes, about it at length in previous spaces about the Tornado Cash story. So we're not going to repeat ourselves, but indeed there is a demand, and we see it all over the place. Like we see it like mentioned by Vitalik, and we see it mentioned here in the Messari report. We see it mentioned everywhere. And what they don't understand, like in many cases, is that this kind of, you know, centralized privacy, I would say, like when somebody can see what you're doing, but others can, it's not solving the problem for people who really need privacy, like people who live, I don't know, in situations where you need privacy, or you know, your life will be in danger. That's not the solution.
Yeah.
And it's important to realize now. So what about like the second approach? Okay, so what if we don't say we will succeed just like, you know, just as Beam, when we will just, you know, keep building and talking about what are the alternatives that we can talk about? And I would like to kind of suggest several different directions we can look at. So first of all, I would like to mention source. And I know that many people in the community don't really like the kind of defocusing from the main goal of the project, and I totally kind of get that. But I think source was a very interesting example, because even though it's a project that, you know, could not raise money eventually and was currently frozen in some way, but we did invest our resources as Beam, like the people and the effort to build it, and we managed to very quickly create something really amazing, which used all of the existing building blocks that we already have: our wallets, the IPFS integration, the blockchain, which is confidential, the smart contract. And in a matter of few weeks, we have created a working concept of decentralized and completely private Git repository, which, you know, if you scale it properly, can compete with GitHub.
Yeah, and this is like, as you said, using the tech that Beam has and all the great things that it comes with for something that's not like exactly Beam, and
Absolutely.
you could use it and not know that you're using Beam, and this is very similar to my thesis about like how crypto will be in 10 years or whatever. People will be using it for gambling or using it to make payments and this kind of thing. They're already using it for gambling, but they'll be using it for all kinds of daily things, and they won't have to think about like, oh, I'm using Ethereum or I'm using Beam and where's my seed phrase and this kind of stuff. It'll be far like smoother, and crypto will be operating on like the underlying rails and this kind of stuff.
No, that could very well be a situation in 10 years, but you know, I would like to to understand what to do now. But
Yeah,
yeah, I agree. So no, but I see this as an example of two things. First of all, our technology, Beam technology for non-financial Web3 applications.
yeah,
And we do see quite kind of interest in this kind of applications all over, from decentralized social, or DSOC as it's called, and also all kinds of tools. For example, specifically Source would be, I think, a great answer to the problem of developers being uh, held accountable, like legally, for the code that they write as an open source and its use, as we saw in the Tornado Cash case, and we keep seeing kind of these attempts to try to tie developers into this process of, you know, regulating how the code is used. And it's, once again, you know, in many daily applications, privacy is an essential component that you now get through centralized entities in some way or another. And I think that we can potentially very interesting decentralized applications that, you know, give you much better level of privacy while at the same time providing like very similar services and you know, applications basically.
yeah, absolutely.
Now another direction we could potentially look at, and it's a more difficult one, because you know, it requires probably, you know, having partnerships with some strong kind of you know, organizations in the space. Otherwise, it would be difficult to implement. But the idea is that you can use Beam um, as this underlying infrastructure for kind of sort of layer two solutions on top that don't necessarily even use Beam. But by the way, this is an interesting point. Uh, when we implemented Source, we wanted to allow people to use the Source token to pay for the service without actually using Beam. And since you need Beam to pay for transactions and the transaction fees, we have created a way to subsidize these transactions. And that's why, for example, we have a decentralized faucet on Beam. Now, this is something that's not even possible on Ethereum. You cannot send an Ethereum transaction without having gas.
Yeah,
Like, what I'm saying is that we have a lot of interesting technological tricks that we can use in many ways, and then try to create this kind of layer two on top of Beam ecosystem to allow organizations to trade with confidentiality. And since we have these SBBS communication channels with wallets, and we can co-sign the transactions, and we have multi-sig implementation, try to establish this more, I hate this word, but like enterprise oriented in some way, or like big players oriented networks that allow you to um, transfer assets between players on top of Beam. But once again, this requires finding a use case, approaching a big organization and saying, listen, now you're using your private network or whatever, or Ethereum, when everyone can see what you're doing. Let's try building this on top of Beam. So it's kind of another direction I could think about theoretically trying.
absolutely, and makes sense. With the last the last approach you mentioned, kind of be similar to how now I've totally forgotten the name. Uh, the side chain or layer two on Bitcoin. I forgot the name of it, but it was by uh, the BTC guys, Samson Mao, and that kind of thing. Also used
Yeah,
confidential access.
I know what you're talking about.
Yeah,
Well,
like kind of a similar approach. Obviously, like totally different uh, product in the essence, though.
yeah, so like instead of creating a sidechain or I think they did create a sidechain, right? They had this kind of different
Yeah,
chain running.
yeah, I
Okay.
believe so.
No, so instead of creating a sidechain, you can just create this virtual layer of abstraction on top of Beam. So for example, let's say you and I, we want to perform some transaction, right? The settlement eventually can happen on chain, but before the settlement, what we can do, and we do have all of these primitives implemented in Beam, we can create an encrypted communication channels, exchange information, sign contracts, lock assets, transfer assets, do whatever we want, using like escrows or smart contracts to enforce certain conditions, and only then like eventually settle on chain. So in terms of it's not for quick trading, it's not for algo trading or any kind of quick transactions, but it does allow organizations or people to move assets confidentially without kind of exposing themselves in any way. And it's more like of an internal trading, right? So like it's not it's more complicated than just sending a simple transaction because does integrate into some existing ecosystem of an enterprise or whatever. But it does allow you this ability to do that on public chain in completely confidential manner. So this is kind of the idea I was going with.
This makes sense, and like I think that especially for like bigger institutions and corporate bodies and this kind of stuff, they are more like familiar with their transactions being private, obviously, and the benefits that come with them. And I think this type of stuff scares a lot of players when it comes to trading on the likes of Ethereum, where there's little to no privacy.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, these organizations that they treat privacy as an essential kind of feature, right? They're not going to transact without it.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, so uh, I will mention a couple more ideas briefly. So, for example, the DAO governance, right? The DAO governance is something that's usually happens in some application, whether centralized or decentralized. But once again, if you are doing this on Ethereum or most other networks that don't have privacy, you're exposing yourself to all kinds of problems. Like people know how you vote, people know what you're doing, how much you're staking, and it's a problem. So we could try to go to this kind of um, idea of creating private applications for specific purposes, like DAO governance is being like one example. And another idea is trying to use a Beam as kind of like I would say bridging solution, um, like basically trying to roll out all kinds of decentralized services on top of Beam. Like you're probably familiar with REN protocol, right? They're doing this decentralized bridging solution where you have like many nodes using MPC to control the process of transferring assets between chains or something like that.
Yeah, makes sense. And this kind of thing, like these kind of products have already shown like decent product market fit. Like people are wanting to move their stuff across chain, whether it's Bitcoin to Ethereum and this kind of stuff.
Absolutely, absolutely. I think the wrapped solutions like WBTC is very popular,
Yeah,
and for a good reason because you are holding value in Bitcoin and you do want to participate in trading on Ethereum. But once again, in this specific case, it's crazy centralized.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Um, yeah. So that's kind of the considerations. And uh, as promised, we're going to publish a Beam roadmap update by our birthday. And all of these thoughts and the directions that we kind of talked about today are going to also be mentioned there. So it will all will be laid out in an organized way. Um, but I think this this is very important for Beam. And I'm not talking about like in more strategical approach because yeah, obviously we have our roadmap set for the next at least 6 months. We're talking about like sidechains and EVM. All of these things are happening. We have a lot of work to do apps and on the DAO, but I think that like this is kind of a period of opportunity to build, and I think it's very important to try to arrive in kind of the more coherent strategy in terms of like what is most likely to work for the project, for the adoption. That's eventually what we want. It's great that we have amazing privacy. What's the point if one uses it? Um, so I don't want like what I'm saying is that we don't want to change our way in terms of like what we are doing and what the technologies that we're providing, but what we would like to do is to find a good strategy to implement in this upcoming year because I believe like most of it is going to be really slow in terms of the market, at least initially, and arrive in it with the best possible offering in terms of privacy for the crypto ecosystem, when things are starting to speed up again.
Absolutely, and this is also like to do with onboarding new people to the Beam ecosystem. Like if just to give an example, we like focused really heavily on something like the similar to Rem Bridges or whatever. This is also going to get people into Beam and interested in it, learn more, partake in the like native Beam ecosystem and this kind of thing, in my opinion.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, we also removed the check marks finally. So
The check marks are gone and never returning.
yeah, everybody is equal now.
Yeah,
Oh, I'm
which
kidding.
is which was meant to be the case like a while back, and there was no like ill intention with the time of it coming to fruition. These things, as you know, take time. We do have a question, Alex, in the Beam community chat. I
Yeah.
think a few spaces ago, maybe 5 or so, excuse me, we mentioned that we may split the spaces up into two. Have one, this one, which is more general and talks about a bit of stuff happening in crypto, a bit of stuff happening in Beam, this kind of stuff, and another one that would be more of a developer focused spaces. Do
Mm-hmm.
we have any news regarding that?
Well, no. I mean, like uh, I'm really for like if you think like or let's do it like that. We can have a quick poll in terms of like who is going to attend, because if it's going to be, I mean, not that I have any problem speaking with people one on one. I really don't. But I just want to understand that enough people are interested, and then we will definitely have a separate space for that, including every once in a while maybe bringing a developer on board and talking to them. So yeah, I think it's possible. That's one option. The second option is to split this space into a fixed kind of fixed division, because obviously we can talk for an hour about technical topics and then we can talk for an hour about gen. But that's we can split it 50-50 or whatever, like talk half an hour about stuff or whatever. So yeah, I'm open to all suggestions. And
The
as I said,
poll,
yeah,
the
yeah, yeah,
poll
I'm
is
voting.
up.
I'm voting yes. I'm voting yes. 100% of people who voted are going to attend. It's me. But I really appreciate the recent input from the community. Even though I'm sometimes maybe sound like I don't know how it sounds, but keep it up. I mean, don't mind me, okay? Just keep it up, and uh, all of these topics are very important. Obviously, it's very difficult, to consider all possible things. Like when we develop things, very often we miss um, concepts and ideas that may be obvious to other people. Yeah, I totally agree that this input is critical for us to succeed.
Yeah, absolutely. And like don't be afraid to ask whatever. Sometimes you'll get an answer fast, sometimes you might have to wait a bit. No problem.
Oh yeah.
And one of the best, like at least in my eyes, maybe I'm biased as one of the people speaking in the space, but I reckon one of the best like places to ask these questions and this kind of stuff is the Beam spaces. Like we're here talking to you. Uh, we're not going to just ignore your questions because it will be very obvious.
Yeah, I totally agree. Okay, so ETA for an Explorer node upgrade. Uh, I don't have it right now. It's a question from the community about the ETA for the Explorer node upgrade.
Yeah.
I will check this information and I will get back to you.
Wicked.
1 second. I think there are some more questions coming.
Yeah, no problem. And we can stick around for a few extra to get some questions because I've just said the best place to ask questions is a Beam space and suddenly realize we won't be having one next week.
Oh yeah, yeah. I think we also should do a call for questions like in advance. I know that people don't usually have questions in advance;
Yeah,
they come up as we speak. But you know, if they do, it's always good to collect them, and then we will be ready and prepared.
absolutely.
Yeah. If
We
you
have,
see, yeah, like in general, like before we wrap up and you know say goodbye for this year, if you have any ideas or thoughts. Uh, about like what the strategy should be or ideas how to make be more useful, more prominent, more known, you're always welcome. And we have a speaker request from Mr. Jadrowski.
Yeah, I just wanted to see if there was by any chance any update on the Dex DApp um, in terms of development.
Yes, yes, we were stuck a little bit on the front end, and now we have finally uh, kind of figured out what exactly should be done there. And I hope it's going to be released in really kind of beginning of January.
Okay, yeah, that's all. And I'm really happy for the Ledger support. Great work.
Thanks. Okay. In this case, thank you very much for being with us and supporting the project. It's really important to us. Next year, please stay safe. Do not invest your money in weird places. Not invest in the and stay healthy. Enjoy the holidays, and we'll see you in 2023.
absolutely have a great and safe end of the year.
Yeah,
And thank you all.
Happy New Year's
yeah.
or
Happy
early
New
New
Year.
Year's.
Happy holidays. All right. Bye bye for now.
Bye bye.